Hello, everybody. This is Meister Keen, and today I'm with Miniature Dragon Comics once again, and we're talking about, we've got a little medley of comics that we're talking about today. We're talking about Daredevil, first issue of Darth Vader, Black Science #1, and we're going to put a little time in on the Button story and talk about that whole thread through the Rebirth series. All right, so Woody, what did you think of this Daredevil story? I just read it myself. I loved it.
Well, this is actually the first time I've read a Daredevil comic since the early '90s, I think, and I did enjoy it. I'm not a Daredevil fan, though. I love the TV show. TV show is awesome. I like this story actually because even though it's coming in the middle of the series, it actually reads like a standalone story. Everything you need to know is right here. It's perfect for somebody to jump on with.
Nice, very nice. Alex, what did you think of the art?
As the art goes, I enjoyed it. I thought it was not too bad. It was definitely a nice level of style. The story was definitely something that, like you said, Woody, was something that you could just get into without having this confusion of what's going on here.
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like a courtroom crime drama happening.
With superheroes.
And you were able to see what was going on with the characters.
Mm-hmm. On the art side, though, I did find it I thought they made some very interesting decisions with how to demonstrate and show off his super senses and the fact that he's blind. Having done stuff like this, tried to do stuff like this with you in other books, I can't imagine how much of a nightmare it must be to execute a graphical style like that.
But I think it becomes a language when you consistently do something that helps get that point across. I'm actually kind of curious if other issues within the series do the same thing or they change part of their formula. Because if they do a consistent thing, it feels like at that point it would be, a good storytelling measure, showing the character do the same thing. And this is to indicate, when he's using his radar, you have an idea of exactly what it looks like.
It's been my experience, though, that when stuff like that happens, like when the art team changes, they just tell that's it, whatever happened before, they can go F off. It's like we're doing what we're doing now. Like in the Flash series for New 52, they had something that was they had a really cool thing where like how fast you go was what the color of your lightning, and that was supposed to be set in stone, and as soon as the new artist was on, it was like whatever, it's gone, and they started doing what was in the TV show. And yes, we have a jet flying overhead.
All right, we're getting hazed.
Yeah, we are. But you're probably getting in stereo because Keenan and I are in the same room, or in the same building.
All right, cool. But, so I think that's all the time we got for Daredevil. Let's talk about Darth Vader.
Okay. By the way, I want to give Daredevil. I would give that book 4 stars. By the way, 4 out of 5.
4 to 5, nice.
Yeah, but I would recommend it to any new reader that wants to get into it for sure.
All right, that's it. I got to say something on Daredevil because that comic was really brilliant. It actually addressed something that I've had on my mind in terms of how heroes deal with just the legality of being a hero and dealing with bad guys. What does Batman do? Classic Batman. He'd beat up the bad guys and leave them tied up in front of in front of the local police precinct, right?
Which is why they always end up in Arkham.
right. They could charge him. They could at least incarcerate him on the basis that they're insane or something. But what do you do with that? Somebody is tied up in front of the police station. Can you really prosecute that guy? There's a legal tangle there.
Right, and I think there's actually something to that. I would believe in a society that actually has Caped Crusaders, has meta individuals like Superman or other various superpowered individuals. There would have to be new laws that basically would not work within our system, but would have to work within their own. There would have to be a new set of regulations, rules, and how things are adhered to. Because, I mean, one, having meta individuals, what do you do with that? And especially individuals that want to have their secret identity. I mean, after all, like, Civil War was a good kind of thought process on what is a superhero, what is a individual that keeps their identity secret, or
a vigilante.
Are you a biological weapon of mass destruction because you were able to nuke part of a city because your superpowers are unstable?
Yeah.
And of course the X-Men constantly struggled with that exact question right there. Can you just have people walking around who can do enormous damage just by existing?
Do you get civil rights if you are that person?
Yeah. What do rights even mean when somebody is that powerful? And how does a society respond to having people who are so different, in their abilities? And Stan Lee even talked about how the fact that the X-Men was really something he made from the standpoint of wanting to confront people with that question of, is it okay to be different? Is it okay to be different in terms of the way you look, the way you act, your capabilities, all of it, right? How different can you get, and how can we deal with that being different, right?
True, and I think it really hits onto like classic sci-fi at that point.
Oh yeah.
That almost like the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, where scientific progress was still going on. A lot of things were unknown, but there was a lot of social commentary. And Stan Lee, coming from the very much the 60s, still had that kind of mindset, that mentality of, I'm talking about the social ramifications of how these individuals are, or taking on the aspect of, for example, like Charles Xavier being very similar to Martin Luther King, and Magneto, in a lot of respects, being like Malcolm X. Very two different mindsets within the civil rights era.
But a similar goal.
As mutants, their philosophies do kind of match. In the regards of Charles Xavier was very much a pacifist, for the most part. Granted, he had his well-trained super soldiers going out and doing heroic things, but still, they were weapons of mass destruction.
A pacifist with a squad of super soldiers.
And you had Magneto, where he was doing, in a lot of regards, terrorist things. His idea was, in a lot of respects, like to Malcolm X, blacks were the superior people. And as Magneto, his thought was mutants were the superior people. They were the ones that should rule. And granted, I mean, I'm just giving a abridged version of it, but that is a thought process within that particular time period. And granted, as other writers and different eras have come, the X-Men have changed.
Wow.
Like what they represent, how the rules, what's going on with society.
Well, sure, and fiction changes with society all the time. Anyway, we've gone from Daredevil to the question of superhero legality to social commentary through science fiction, including comic books. That's a pretty deep discussion, and we should probably spend more than half an hour on it at some point.
True, and I think at this point, stay on topic.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's get on to Star Wars.
Stay on target. All right, let's talk about.
Nice segue.
Let's talk about Star Wars.
All right. Well, Darth Vader #1. This one's interesting because it basically picks up right after Darth Vader became Darth Vader. When what they basically wanted to do with the first issue, from what I'm getting from reading it, is like the main complaint, Revenge of the Sith, is that they basically made Darth Vader look like a whiny little bitch, and this takes that ending scene and extends it and makes it longer and allows Darth Vader to still be a badass.
I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that. There's definitely that Sith mentality. Look, all of this terrible things that have happened to you, the death of Padme, the loss of all your goals. What has this given you? Pain. Now
and
use it.
The Emperor literally has to pacify Vader with Force lightning in this scene, which is really kind of neat. And he's like, "Do that again, and I will kill you."
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but reading this book, I particularly just basically when I read some comic books, I utilize voices. So with
right,
disappointing, or with the Emperor, no, I will defeat you. I don't know if you guys do that, or you just read it as is.
I don't. I usually just read it as is. Actually,
I always have head voices.
Yeah. Well,
thank you.
This one had a little bit of controversy to it because it delves into, the ongoing change to the mythology of Star Wars. Because in the previous canon, we had all this stuff that people had created, and it's being rewritten and changed, and how the Force works and how the lightsabers work. And so in this one, it's getting into how Darth Vader basically has to make his new lightsaber, and the rationale that Palpatine is giving Darth Vader is that in order for a Sith to have a lightsaber, they have to corrupt an existing lightsaber crystal. And so Darth Vader is being sent on a quest where he has to basically find a Jedi and steal his lightsaber and make the kyber crystal bleed, as Palpatine puts it. But he doesn't have a lightsaber, and he's not allowed to just grab one from somewhere. So he's on this mission, and he has to do everything with the power of the Force, rather than how he would normally have a lightsaber and use that to defend himself.
Wow.
No, I thought it was quite interesting, those poor schmucks that he first encounters.
Oh, yeah.
As some foolish individuals acquire his ship, and
the ship he was supposed to get.
They pay dearly.
Oh, yeah. But it is interesting, though, that like the way this is set up, if he didn't have the body armor that he was wearing as Darth Vader, he would have been killed in that encounter, which I thought was really interesting, because he did take a couple hits that would have been lethal without it. I'm really liking this one. I mean, like, kind of as a follow-up to the original Darth Vader miniseries from Marvel, it's more of a prequel, but it's kind of, again, like we were saying in the last episode, Marvel is only putting A-list creators on these comics, so everything looks perfect. The story, the writing is good, the art is just top notch. There's nothing funky here at all. It all looks good.
Interesting. And I actually really like seeing the world through the eyes of Darth Vader, because you're actually seeing, like, he's switching between vision modes.
Yeah,
he's a little bit of Predator vision kind of thing going on.
Yeah,
there's just ship, poor schmucks. I haven't actually read this, but I'm flipping through it right now. And you guys are right. This is gorgeous art.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I also want to say that I enjoyed this so much, actually, because I wasn't, having been a fan of the Dark Horse Star Wars comics and read lots of them, and then I was really upset that Marvel got the license again, and having remembered what the Marvel comics were like back in the 70s when they did Star Wars, I'm like, God damn it. But the thing is I enjoyed the story so much, I've already picked up the second issue.
I like the story also.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of a very Calvin and Hobbes style.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The one with the mouse droid.
Oh yeah, you're referring to the backup story.
Yes, there's a second story within the issue that kind of feels like no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah. The entire thing is from the perspective of a mouse droid.
Right, and with it, Vader doing his part of anyone that disappoints him suffers,
Yeah.
And this poor mouse droid trying to do its job and end up screwing up and suffering for it.
Yeah, and it's the classic bad manager where you keep getting interrupted in doing your task, so you never get to finish it because the boss keeps stopping you, but yet he's pissed off that you're not done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely kind of that micromanager kind of feel.
Yeah.
Oh, this is lovely.
Yeah.
It's actually weirdly incongruous to see a Darth Vader, Star Wars, any kind of story in that universe in this art style.
Yeah.
Very weird.
It's probably somebody that they knew is like, dude, this is going to be really cool. They're like, sure, why not? You know?
Well, all right, it's fine. I like it, actually. You're right. It is kind of Calvin and Hobbes-ish.
Oh, it's Chris Eliopoulos. That makes sense.
Oh, okay. All right.
He does a lot of stuff for the Savage Dragon.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So, is that all we wanted to say on Darth Vader?
I would give this comic 5 stars.
5 stars. Nice. All right, Alex?
5 lightsabers.
Yeah, I think it's a definite Order 66 points.
66 points and 5 stars. All right, very good. Moving on to Black Science.
Okay. Black Science number 1. Okay, I have been reading this comic for a long time. Now, you read the first issue, right, Alex?
Yeah, you were the one that initially introduced me to the series a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I am still reading it to current.
Yeah, so am I. This guy, I think the series is in the 20s now, but when I had picked it up because it was reviewed on another show, the comic book show I was watching, and it looked interesting. And I don't know if I would have bought it in the shop if I ran across it, but I was reading the first issue, and then the initial 2-page spread, which is I think it's pages 4 and 5. When I saw that, I was completely hooked. This was like Alex and I used to watch a show called Sliders, which basically was a similar premise, but badly executed.
Sliders, for people that might not know what that is, was a television series on Fox during the 90s that had dimensional travel.
You were lost.
Basically, would travel from one world to another, or alternate world. Yeah,
and this comic is what Sliders was trying to be, but failed miserably.
It has a much more sophisticated story within it, and also great mythos that how dimensional travel works, and the way that alternate realities, alternate kind of timelines, these other worlds that you slide to, how it all fits in with their own mythos.
But you could never do this on a TV budget. This comic book would be stretching a Hollywood budget. You basically have, like, it starts with a lightning bolt crashing down into a jungle, and then you have these people in these kind of spacesuits running to escape, and there's these weird fish people riding on land eels, and they're being chased through a jungle, and you think, wow, great. And they come to a cliffside, and it's like, well, they're screwed. And there's lightning storms going all around, and then it goes to this 2-page spread where you see that the jungle is actually on the back of a giant turtle, and there's a ziggurat-style pyramid in the middle of this, and there's actually like an entire fleet of these turtles swimming through the ocean with weird rock outcroppings and islands, and it's just, and lightning everywhere. And you see this, and you are, I don't know if you're looking at this, Keenan, but it's like, you see this, and you're completely like, what the bleep did he bleep, 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 bleep? It's like, it goes kind of like that. And then you just keep reading. It's like, oh my God. And it's a breakneck pace from start to finish in the first issue, and you never have a chance to catch your breath. Like, they have these weird creatures which are frogs. They have lightning tongues, and they can whip you with the lightning. And at one point, the main character, who's desperate to save his children who aren't supposed to be here and get what they need to make their dimensional device work and not blow up, literally like decapitates one of the frogmen and is whipping everybody with its electric tongue with the residual electric charge. And it's just complete insanity. But it's amazing.
Yeah, as artwork goes, it has a very nice style to it. I think it has a very unique kind of feel. It has a very like if you have a very painterly look with kind of a urban kind of graffiti style kind of mixed together.
Mm-hmm. Keenan, I think you'll find the frog people on page 18 from what I'm seeing here.
I'm looking at it. I'm transfixed. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's a frog exotic dancer. Why?
No, they've actually are enslaving the fish people.
Oh, it's the fish. It's a fish.
And,
okay.
And they actually have been eating them. So the fish people and the frog people are at war, and so it's actually kind of neat because in this first issue, Grant McKay, the main character, rescues her, right? Takes her back. He accidentally brings her back to her husband, and then the fish people let him go because, oh hey, you did us a solid, you know, and but it's just, we're not really ruining anything about the plot. Like this first issue is so dense. There's so much going on here, and you know, throughout the whole series, there's some really neat thematic elements. Like you notice on his suit, he has that weird design, that kind of like concentric circle design, which they call the onion, and it's symbolic of how the multiverse is structured.
Right. And that goes into part of, like I was saying, their mythos.
Yeah. And you find that symbol in every universe because the idea is that whatever happens in the center echoes out to all the different layers of the onion, right? And so Grant McKay has designed this pillar device because he is an echo of somebody else that did it before. And it's
definitely an interesting take on the transdimensional travel capability.
Yeah,
as they are feeling the echoes, the effects of like possibility and probability.
Yeah, like, and they're doing also a good mix of like one and done episodes and story arcs, and also having a larger overarching story, because things that happen before that are significant are not forgotten, and they actually like this series has consequences.
True, it definitely has a episodic with basically the kind of feel of the creature of the week, you know, the various stories of they go to this place, they do some sort of feat, they find something that they need, or they just happen to go to this horrible place in dealing with the consequences. But underlining, it's kind of one of those, like almost kind of like Firefly, where, you know, standalone, you can watch an episode and get the feel of what's going on, but watching the full series, you get the full idea that there is overall storyline going on with the rest of the universe.
Oh yeah,
this is like Rick and Morty, but played straight and without the absurdism.
Yeah, and
that kind of a brilliant way to put it.
You know, also as a side note, I would almost bet that whoever who's doing the art, like Matteo Scalera, I met him. I never had a chance to ask, but like I almost bet that somebody connected with this book has played the Rifts role playing game, because when you see the second issue and you're like, wait a minute, I've seen these before. Yeah. So yeah, no, this entire series has been 5 stars from start to finish. There's never been a bad issue. The entire thing has just been like absolutely first rate. I'd almost go so far as to possibly say this is one of the best comics in production today. It certainly would be in my top 10 of my life.
Well, that is a solid recommendation for Black Science.
Yeah.
Alex, you want to give a final word on it?
My rating on it is an onion. It's a multi-layered thing.
All right, good.
All right.
All right, fair enough. I think, well, shoot, guys, that might be all the time we've got. Do we do we have time to go into the Button story?
I think we could spend a few minutes talking about it. There's, you know, like, okay, so the Button is basically the major DC publishing initiative. It's part of the Rebirth initiative, and what the Button is basically a 4-part story that was a crossover with Batman and the Flash. And what's interesting about this this whole thing is that DC needed to kind of like reinvent itself after the whole deal with the New 52 initiative, where they had gone a little dark and gritty, and what ended up happening was that it was commercially successful, but they were steadily pissing off their fans, and they were starting to lose the core fan base. And so Rebirth is an attempt to bring DC back to what people loved, which is why we brought back a classic married Superman. But in this story, what it's basically getting into there's been hints of it, but the basic gist of it that we were going to talk about was that there are very, very specific inferences throughout this whole thing that the Watchmen is going to be crossing over with the main DC universe. Whoa. And if you open up the DC Rebirth one shot, Keenan, what you'll see is the first several pages are structured in the panel layout and design of the Watchmen.
That's crazy. Rorschach would just eat the DC universe alive.
Yeah, and then it goes like this for a while, and then you got this whole story with Batman and Wally West and the Flash, and they're basically bringing back the classic Wally West, because having the black kid Wally West wasn't as successful as they wanted. Like tying in with the TV show didn't entirely work, and because people loved the redheaded ginger Wally West, and then at the end of this issue, you have a clue that Dr. Manhattan may be involved, and you get the button from the comedian with this blood stain.
Right. Getting into a bit of spoiler territory within that. The very last scene goes in and has Dr. Manhattan actually grabbing the button. And the smiley face button with blood on it.
That is actually at the very end of the Button miniseries itself.
And with it, there has been talk on Reddit and various other channels that it has been confirmed that it is Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
There's talks about coming this fall, continuation of the series.
Yeah, and there's this thing that supposedly the reason why everybody got younger in in New 52 was because Dr. Manhattan somehow stole 10 years of their lives and made them all younger that way.
But why would Dr. Manhattan do that? This is kind of a thing about Dr. Manhattan was because the evolution of that character, he went from a human being to lost and confused, and his very molecular structure basically gone, dispersed, and he had to remake himself. And in the process of remaking himself, he began to discover his abilities. Right.
He basically ascended to Godhead.
Right. And in doing that, he slowly, over time, became more and more disassociated from humanity. He got to this condition where he really just didn't give a shit about humanity, except from the standpoint that they were kind of interesting.
If I could interrupt you there, Keenan, to answer your question, there's a deep DC mythology aspect of this that you're not aware of.
Oh.
And what it is that in the DC mythology, at the beginning of the universe, this great hand comes out, right? Which is supposedly God making the universe, right? And in Crisis on Infinite Earths, they revealed that somebody went to the beginning of the universe and saw that hand, and they weren't supposed to, and seeing it caused the universe to fracture into a multiverse. But the inference is, like the running theory right now, the one I find most interesting, is that when Dr. Manhattan at the end of the Watchmen said, "I'm going to go go somewhere and make some life," the theory is that the DC universe might actually be him. Might be the life he created, and that the giant hand, which was always depicted as being blue in the original stories, might be Dr. Manhattan.
I do kind of wonder if Alan Moore, what his kind of
he is rolling
cat crap crazy thoughts are.
I'm sure he hates it.
Well, he is quite a unique snowflake within the crap storm of humanity.
Yeah, he's a whole other episode. And they actually put out a Dr. Manhattan one-shot, by the way, that was not written by Alan Moore, but it actually put out the idea that when he was first created, he accidentally created a multiverse within the Watchmen universe by trying to alter history. And
now, is this the series of books that were done as before Watchmen?
Yes. Yeah. This is what before Watchmen's series, and so it was like a prequel kind of thing. And the idea that they put forth, which I thought was rather interesting, was that in creating this multiverse, every timeline ended in the nuclear annihilation of his world. And he only found one timeline where it didn't happen, and that was the timeline that we saw in the books, in the comics. And so, in order to save his world and guarantee it survived, he had to eliminate all of his timelines and destroy them, and take away his free will, in order to ensure that everybody survived. So he voluntarily put himself in that state that you were just referring to, Keenan.
Huh.
Which that's not obviously what Alan Moore intended, but it is now part of the DC canon.
That's completely bizarre, and I would imagine that Alan Moore is completely. I'd want to know from him like what he thinks of what's being done with his character in the universe.
Well, I've heard that Dave Gibbons is okay with it because he was the original artist, or at least that he's not really like violently opposed to it. But I think he would wish they left it alone. But I know Alan Moore is definitely not a fan. But Alan Moore is also his own worst critic and his own worst enemy. And again, that's a whole other discussion, for another episode.
Well, okay, let's not say anything that's going to get us sued or something.
Don't worry about that. We're too small time.
All right, fine.
But it is interesting where you have this button in a lightning bolt from the Speed Force. The button appears in the Batcave. So Batman, they got this picture of Batman holding the button that Rorschach had on with his bloodstain, and so that button disappears, unfortunately, and Batman loses it. But it it reacts with other artifacts that are connected to the larger story, and it's very interesting to see. Like this story basically asked more questions than it answered. There's clearly more going on, but it is interesting.
Well, fair enough.
I definitely found it quite interesting of what happened to the Reverse Flash.
Oh yeah. Well, he's supposedly a living paradox. Like the Reverse Flash from before this all happened came back. Like the Reverse Flash from the Flashpoint miniseries survived somehow, and so it's actually a different Reverse Flash than the one that we've been seeing in the comics in the New 52, and he's the original Eobard Thawne Reverse Flash, and apparently Dr. Manhattan killed him. Like he actually show him going. He was all desperate to reach whatever the source of the power was, and it's like, I will become a god. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I didn't know. No, don't kill me. It's like, and then boom, he gets reduced to a skeleton and ends up landing in the Batcave.
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting, the cosmic treadmill.
Oh, that was great.
It definitely felt kind of like a Jack Kirby age device.
Yeah, that never goes away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not that familiar with Flash.
Wait. Okay. We're going to end off in a second because we're running out of time. But Could somebody explain?
Okay, so the
cosmic treadmill.
The idea is it's a dimensional travel device that the Flash can run on it and uses his speed to power it, and then as long as he's running, it can travel into other universes or other time periods. But he has to. It's a way of him basically traveling to another universe, and he's able to run and power it. And it's
that is so stupid.
Relative
I love it.
Oh, come on, Keaton. It's the grace of the story that Deus Ex Machina necessary to what it needs.
No. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But God, is it stupid.
The best part is that Batman had just got his ass handed to him by Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash. Shows up at the Batcave when somehow beats the Flash there, and the Flash is like, "What? I'm Batman." And then as the Flash gets on the treadmill to take off, I think he beat Flash to the Watchtower. Anyways, whatever. Batman literally batarangs the treadmill and goes along for the ride, and he's like swinging along, and it's just being dragged through time. And he's not supposed to be there. And the Flash is like, "Don't let go. Don't look, Marion."
Okay. All right. Cool. I think that's all the time we've got.
All right.
That's incredible. I have to read this now because I loved Watchmen. I went and bought the book before I got to see the movie. I went and saw the movie in theaters. I knew it was coming. I got to get the book first, and I was absolutely in love with the whole story. Watchmen is definitely it's top of my list in terms of best comic books I've ever read. So
top of everybody's list. I would give the Button story. I would make it a 4-star story only because they wasted. I think they wasted time building up other things that are coming later, because like it's not a self-contained story. It's actually meant to like it does a good job of building on the mythology, but they also, I think, spent too much time worrying about like setting up another storyline later, and I didn't care about that. But I did think though, like it was cool. I might give it 4.5 stars actually. I mean, like based upon what I knew of it and the stuff I'd seen, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't enough to make me want to keep reading Batman or the Flash.
Fair enough. All right. So, any last final words on this,
Alex?
I say that it's a Button, a Rorschach mask, a Alcopter, and at least 2 capes up.
Yeah. Well, Alan Moore would give it 2 beards.
Button, a mask, an Owlcopter, and a couple of capes. All right.
Okay.
Very good. Now, with that, I think we'll end off. Thank you very much, gentlemen. This has been lovely.
Cheers.
Hey, and if you want to see more of us, you can find me at conwaytheseries.com. You can read my books, see my ongoing comic series. Check us out on Twitter and Facebook at Cyber Symbiosis.
All right. Alex, where can we find you?
You can find me at Poor Artman on DeviantArt, and also you can find me at Alexius Poorman at Facebook, and also Twitter.
Great. All right, and I'm Meister Kane, and you're looking right at my YouTube channel, so that's all you guys need. All right, cool. You guys have a good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.